So far in our demos, all we've had to go by when we have a validation error is this red box that the control draws by default. It's not really enough information to help out the user. So let's take a look at how we can provide a custom template to either customize the appearance of how it highlights the box and also how we can get to the errors for display purposes. First thing we might want to do is put a tooltip on controls that have the red box so the user can hover over them and see what the error is. To do that, I'm going to drop into the XAML, go into the resources section here and define a style. I'm going to give this style a name of error style and let its target type be framework element. So any framework element can have a tooltip. We don't have to constrain it to a particular type. What we're going to leverage here is some attached properties that the validation class has. So we set up a trigger section to our style, and we set up a property trigger on the attached property validation.hasError. So whichever framework element that we apply this to, basically this is going to be monitoring the hasError property, and whenever that hasError property goes true, the value that we specify here, it's going to trigger this setter. This setter is going to go set the tooltip property of that framework element, and it's going to set it to a value that it obtains from the errors collection on the validation class. So it's using a relative source binding here to basically get a reference to the element itself. Use the attached property validation.errors to get the errors collection. Use the current item property, which will give you basically the first item in the collection in a safe way. So if there are no errors, it doesn't have a problem trying to index in. And then the error content, which is that same thing we saw in the validation events demo, which is typically the error string. So now we just need to tie this error style onto our controls. So I'll drop down to my text box and add style equals static resource error style. Now with that in place, I can put in my ABC, tab out, wait for the 5 seconds, and now when I hover over that, we can see we get a tooltip that tells us invalid phone format is the problem. Now you might also want to customize the way the control displays that error. Instead of a red box, you might want some kind of icon next to it. To do that, we're going to go back up to the resource section and define a couple more resources. Now this does require you to understand control templates a little bit, because what we're doing is we're defining a custom control template that we're going to apply to our input control. The structure of what you put in that control template is totally up to you, but there's a magic element that you need to have in here called adorned element placeholder. And this is basically going to be a placeholder where the normal text box visual tree is going to be placed within this control template, and whatever else you put around it is up to you. So you can think of it as you're wrapping the normal text box with something that you want to show, and we're only going to show this when there's a validation error. So what I've got here is I got a dock panel. The last element in a dock panel will fill the dock panel. And then notice I put an ellipse, which I docked to the right, and just have some structure to that ellipse. So this is basically going to give us a little gradient shaded round circle. Notice it also has a tooltip associated with it that we can hover over. So we define this control template, and now we have to associate it with the controls that are going to use it. So we apply an implicit style here, which is going to apply to all text boxes that don't already have a style. Setting some margin, and then the key thing here is we're setting the error template. And this validation.error template is an attached property that we can set, and we're setting it to our control template that we just defined up above. Validation system is smart enough to know only use this template if there are validation errors. In addition, we want a tooltip on these controls as well. So similar to the style trigger that we put separately, we embed that same tooltip using the validation errors current item error content when there is an error on the control. So with that in place, we can run. And remember, on the cell phone, we had applied a style explicitly for the tooltip, but the other two don't have a style applied. So we can see that now we get that red dot to the right instead of a red box around the control. And if we hover over the red dot, we get the contains invalid data that is part of that ellipse. If we hover over the text box, we get the invalid input format that's coming out of the tooltip. So that's how you can provide a custom error indication for a control, by providing a control template that contains the adorned element placeholder for the normal control and whatever you want to surround it with, and making sure you set that as the error template for the control that you want.